the people that have inspired us, the landmarks that have thrilled us, and the events that we remember fondly. The Coachella Valley has a rich cultural history. I'm Steve Sumrall. Join me as I take you on a tour through our desert past. Welcome to our desert past. I'm Steve Sumrall. We're here at the Palm Springs Village Fest, which has been bringing you arts and crafts and food and entertainment for 30 years. This crowd is only here on Thursday night, but would you believe there was a time not so long ago where it was packed like this every night? It was called Spring Break, and it was a part of our desert past.
Within minutes, 15 minutes, it was just literally a mob of people completely covering the intersection.
Ken Kurtz recalls the events of Saturday, March 29th, 1986, a period which has come to be known as the Palm Springs Spring Break Riot.
As far as a riot, it was nothing like we see today, or even back then in some cities. It wasn't like that at all. It was just a mob that was getting out of line. But no fires, no burning, all this kind of crap, just wildness.
These unexpected acts of wildness ruined what was, at the time, an annual Valley tradition.
Party for Diana! Party! Yeah! Party! Party!
Young people, mostly from the West Coast, had been flocking to Palm Springs during spring break from their respective colleges for some time.
Miss, perhaps you could tell me why everybody comes to Palm Springs.
Gee, this is where all the fun is.
And all the girls.
A premise which was played for laughs in the 1963 film Palm Springs Weekend. But unlike that film, mostly set in various resorts, most of the action could be found downtown. When they weren't hitting the pool, they were cruising the canyon. Palm Canyon Drive was party central. The youth would mingle and find relief from the desert heat by spraying each other with water pistols, or throwing water balloons, or sometimes just tossing cups of water.
Actually, it was just a lot of fun on a beautiful hot afternoon.
Ken Kurtz, who at the time was new to the desert by way of northern Wisconsin, was shooting footage on a Super 8 video camera.
And I just started walking down the street. And I was on one side filming and stuff, and kids are all partying, and they're on motorcycles, and they're throwing water all over each other, and they're on buses, and those double-decker buses. And
as Ken continued to walk north down Palm Canyon Drive, he noticed that the crowd was thickening.
And there's well over 1,000 kids piled into this intersection area. And I looked up on the roof of Palm Springs Hotel, and a buddy of mine was up there, not a buddy, but somebody that I'd met, and he was a still photographer. And he hollered down to me, he said, "Ken, you got to get up here and see this." So I threw the camera up to him. It was a one-story building, and I climbed up the lattice and jumped on the roof. And I started filming down on the intersection. And now, within minutes, 15 minutes, it was just literally a mob of people completely covering the intersection.
Of course, more people in the street means that there's less street to drive on. Therefore, all the vehicles were now funneling into one lane.
And they were obviously slowing down. They were just barely crawling through this. And the kids were starting to mob the cars. They were jumping up on top of them. They were shaking the cars. Buses tried to get through, and 50 kids would mob it and start rocking it back and forth.
When a pickup truck full of young women drove through the intersection, the situation escalated from disrupting traffic to assault.
And the guys piled in there, and now they're ripping clothes off of girls, and they're starting to scream. I also noticed in the film, two gals were standing there, and they kind of walk into the crowd to see what's going on, and the next thing you know, they get mobbed. And how in the world they got out of there, I don't know, but they came running out, which had the towel wrapped around them and stuff. They'd ripped their clothes off, and then a limo came through, and some guys jumped up on the hood, and then somewhat onto the windshield. And so it's getting wild.
It would take a strong law enforcement presence to de-escalate the situation.
And in the film, when you look at it closely, you'll see some beer bottles flying over into the police crowd, and they're putting their hands up and getting hit by them and stuff. And the police were absolutely just pissed. They pulled their batons out, and they were smashing them on garbage cans and the aluminum street light poles, and anything they could do to make noise and sound rough. And it worked. because that whole entire crowd scattered.
One officer was knocked unconscious after being struck in the head with a beer bottle. Approximately 120 arrests were made. Spring break would continue in Palm Springs for several years after that, but with fewer and fewer visitors, largely due to the efforts of one celebrity mayor. It was Sonny Bono's administration that cracked down on the spring breakers by holding them accountable for their actions. New rules were put into effect, and if anyone were to break these rules, they would receive a citation.
They made it so miserable for the kids that they didn't want to come back, or they had an open beer in their hand. Boom, they're getting fined if they stepped off the street or off the curb on a red curb and they weren't supposed to be there, jaywalking.
Since G-strings were creating a distraction for drivers, they were now outlawed. Even the squirt water bottles, which were once sold on Palm Canyon, were now deemed illegal.
They did everything they could to go after the kids and stop it. And it worked, because they just thought it's no fun going to Palm Springs anymore. We're out of there. So they just never came back after that.
Now, by promoting family events, conventions, and LGBTQ events, the city of Palm Springs has been able to maintain its status as a go-to destination. When we come back, do you know which iconic band littered the desert floor with old guitars? I'll tell you, coming up. Can you name the style of music that came out of Palm Desert? Can you name the iconic band who littered the Indio sand dunes with old guitars? Here's a look at the music that has shaped our desert past. This is Mickey Dolenz of the Monkees beating up a Coke machine under the Coachella Valley sky in a scene from the 1968 movie, Head. It's one of the earlier instances of musicians caught on film interacting with our desert. It wouldn't be the last. In 1984, Tears for Fears topped the charts with Everybody Wants to Rule the World. The video for that single introduced the Coachella Valley to MTV viewers as well as music lovers worldwide.
I know pain is as natural as the rain.
Years later, the addition of the Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival would inspire musicians such as Vampire Weekend, Nicki Minaj, and Beyonce to shoot music videos out here.
Sex habit, these Chanel bags is a bad habit.
But it was one specific video shoot from an iconic band during the early 80s that caught the attention of some motorcycle riders.
And we came out here one day to go riding on Avenue 38, which is known as the Miniature Glamis for their sand dunes. And we saw a big camera crew out here, big trucks, and they were filming a video for the band Fleetwood Mac, Hold of Me. And we got to meet all the stars and everybody, and it was kind of neat. And it will always be something to remember. They were pretty fascinated with us because we're out in the middle of the desert. Of course, meeting Stevie Nicks, Mick Fleetwood was very interesting. And I wish we would have had smartphones back then.
But it wasn't just some fond memories that Fleetwood Mac left behind. There were some interesting souvenirs.
A lot of people found guitars. I heard people come out here, collected them, tried to get the autographs and all kinds of stuff. They kind of came out here, filmed this thing, drove off, and kind of abandoned it.
Many music fans who are not even familiar with the city of Sky Valley do know this sign, thanks to the efforts of the desert band Caius. It replaced a similar sign that was featured on the cover of the band's album, Welcome to Sky Valley. And if you look at the back of the sign, you could find a collection of stickers from the bands which they have inspired, as well as the handwritten signatures of fans. And if you happen to feel like leaving your own mark, there's a Sharpie attached to the sign. In 2019, the popularity of the structure made it a target for vandals who attempted to steal the sign. Their efforts were in vain, and within hours, in a joint effort between some Australian Caius fans and locals, the sign was repaired. 5 days later, this photo was taken. It was the band Caius that helped to popularize outdoor generator parties, events that are fondly remembered by fans such as Lenny Plaus.
These little homemade desert music festivals that went on out here. And that was your Friday night. You would go out and be thousands and thousands of kids out in the middle of the desert with all these desert bands playing. So it was very interesting.
So during the early 90s, Caius, as well as some other desert bands, ushered in the Palm Desert scene, or desert rock. It was a genre that inspired Blender magazine to list Palm Desert as one of the top 7 rock and roll cities in America. Even though Caius disbanded in 1995, band members would go on to either form or play in such notable bands as Queens of the Stone Age and Eagles of Death Metal.
It was just very magical. A lot of guys created things out here that was very interested, and a lot of outsiders looked in from New York and LA and Europe and got pretty fascinated of what went on out here.
When we come back, it's getting hot, so we're going to talk about swimming pools. Stay tuned. It's that time of year, it's getting hot out. How do we stay cool? There have been some fun ways over the years. Some water parks have come and gone. What happened to one of them may surprise you. It has been mentioned at one time that the Cloverleaf Water Park contained the longest enclosed water slide in the country.
Yeah, Cloverleaf Water Park, that's amazing. We used to go there. Out there in Thousand Palms, it was $5 to get in.
It opened in 1987 and was operational for only 2 years. Besides slides, there was a man-made lake and an amphitheater for concert performances. Believe it or not, this is the Cloverleaf Water Park, or where it used to be. It's up Edom Hill on the way to the dump. There are no slides, no water, and the only visitors to this area are occasional jackrabbits and tumbleweeds. This drone footage is really the only way to comprehend how the area used to look.
The only downfall about there, it was just very windy. When you got to the top after you got wet, you know, when the wind blew, you got a little chilly.
It was the combination of wind and sand, as well as an ant infestation, that discouraged visitors to the park. Families decided that there were better activities that didn't involve subjecting the kids to a blinding sandstorm. Therefore, the visitors left, and this very expensive structure was, over time, buried by the blowing sand. Now, let us go further out west, outside Desert Hot Springs. There's another abandoned structure that used to hold water, although not nearly as much. This is the Nude Bowl. So called because this structure was originally part of a nudist resort called Desert Gardens Ranch.
It's just a bowl. It's a bowl that's about maybe like 10, 11 feet, and it's in the shape of a kidney.
Since the late 70s, this abandoned kidney-shaped swimming pool has attracted skateboarding enthusiasts from around the world, and an occasional biker or two. There are no paved roads leading to the Nude Bowl, but that hasn't discouraged any visitors.
But you can only get there off like basically the paved dirt of everybody else who's already gone there. They paved the way for us to get out there.
During the 90s, the parties surrounding the Nude Bowl were constant. This led to occasional violence. Some complaints about guns and fighting led to the police filling the bowl with dirt. Soon after, the skateboarders removed the dirt and repaired the bowl. A few months later, the police returned, broke up the concrete, and buried it again. And again, the skateboarders returned, removed the dirt, and repaired the bowl. When it comes to skating culture, the Nude Bowl has become so iconic, it's been replicated right here at the Palm Springs Skate Park.
The only thing that's really a difference is that it's a little wider, and it's at least maybe like a foot higher. So it's just larger in size, but it's actually the exact same thing.
Another abandoned water structure would merge with skate culture one more time during the spring of 2019. That's when a small group of professional skateboarders, including skate icon Tony Hawk, would shred their wheels against what used to be Palm Springs' most successful water park. These 18 acres opened in 1986 as the Oasis Water Park. Over the next 3 decades, it would be rebranded, first as Not Soak City, then Palm Springs Wet and Wild. It closed in 2018, and 1 year later, the skaters arrived to shoot a 9-minute video for the skater magazine, Thrasher. Impressing many skating enthusiasts, like Chris Tilley of Palm Springs.
I think it's a good idea to repurpose it, and why let it go to waste, right? You know, why not have people in there doing that kind of thing?
When we come back, we're going to bid farewell to one of Palm Springs' most honored citizens, one with a link to Hollywood's golden age. As you may be aware, many Hollywood stars like to call our desert home. Cheetah was one such star. He was supposedly one of the last surviving chimpanzees to be featured in the original Tarzan films, and he is a part of our desert past. Well, we all know what that sound means. Tarzan is calling out for help from all of his jungle friends. The first to respond, of course, is his furry sidekick, Cheetah the chimp. The character of Tarzan was introduced to the world through the literary works of Edgar Rice Burroughs, beginning in 1912. Cheetah, however, was never mentioned in any of Burroughs' stories. Tarzan's chimpanzee pal was the creation of Hollywood writers, making his debut in the first Tarzan film, Tarzan the Ape Man, with Johnny Weissmuller in 1932. During the production of the original Tarzan films, multiple chimpanzees have taken on the role of Cheetah. Several chimps were on hand during each film shoot, and each specific chimp would be called on to perform whatever specific task he or she would be trained to do, be it backflips, picking up things, or performing music?
Why don't you stop this racket, Cheetah? You'll never be a musician.
Some of the chimps for these films were provided by an animal trainer named Tony Gentry.
My uncle had 3 chimps. They were all cheetahs, and from the Tarzan pictures.
One of these chimps is Jigs 4, named after Jigs, the first chimp to appear as Cheetah. Jigs 4 is more commonly just referred to as Cheetah.
My uncle was really good with Cheetah, but it wasn't a normal life for the animals to be in the motion picture business.
And let's be clear, the motion picture business wasn't easy for chimpanzees, especially the traumatic way they were introduced to it.
His mother was most likely murdered to bring him in to put him in show business. The zoos and the circuses back in the 20s and 30s and 40s, we need 10 baby chimps. How they got them, they killed the parents and pulled the babies off the parents. And 99.9%, I'm sure that's what happened to Cheetah's mother. They probably pulled Cheetah as a baby off his dead mother's body, and that was horrible because it was all for money. It was in my uncle's will to have Cheetah put to sleep when my uncle passed because he was afraid he'd be mistreated or go to research or to a roadside zoo or whatever, and he was adamant that he didn't want that because they were such good friends, and it's like his son, his own son. And so it took me 2 years to talk him out of it, and he agreed to let me bring Cheetah down here.
So, in 1991, following the death of Tony Gentry, Dan Westfall became the caretaker for Cheetah the chimp at his home in Palm Springs. Casa de Cheetah, for a time, was a refuge for exotic animals.
Here at my facility, I had orangutans, I had baboons, I had all different kinds of monkeys throughout the year.
Dan recalls Cheetah's immediate reaction upon reaching Palm Springs.
But working chimps back in that era, they kept them confined so they could keep control on them. So Cheetah was so excited the day I brought him down, and I gave him a blanket, and he went out in the larger part of the cage facility and spread the blanket all out on the floor. He was so excited because he was in a place, it was so big to him.
Besides Cheetah, you've had other members of his family as well.
Yeah, Jeter, his grandson, he now lives in Florida at a nice big sanctuary. Jeter's 34 now.
And Susie, seen here with Jackie Gleason in the 1969 film How to Commit Marriage.
He steps into it every time, doesn't he, Mildred?
She was wonderful, and I did an act with her. I was in the Palm Springs Follies for like 11 seasons, but Susie and Jeter was in the show with me the first year, and then the 4th year I brought Jeter back in the Follies.
Later in life, Cheetah discovered a new passion, art.
He became an artist after he moved here, and his paintings hang in like 30 countries around the world. Steven Spielberg has one of his paintings. Carol Channing had a painting. Several celebrities had his painting. K-Star. His paintings hung in the National Museum in London, Trafalgar Square.
The money raised from Cheetah's art went towards a nonprofit to help primate-based charities. In 1995, Cheetah was honored with a star on the Palm Springs Walk of Stars. Dan Westfall's star sits alongside it.
Cheetah has been recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records as being the world's oldest living primate. And this may be true. However, no one's certain as to just how old Cheetah actually was.
For a long time, I thought I knew his age because my uncle stretched the truth. My uncle was typically Hollywood. You keep everything in Hollywood, you know. So now I don't really know his age. According to Guinness, he has it hanging on the wall here. He's like 87 years old. I don't believe he's that old. I don't know.
Further confusing the issue were worldwide reports of Cheetah's death in 2011 at the age of 79. This was a different chimp living in Florida who may have swung with Tarzan as well. Dan addressed the issue at the time.
Media's putting out that they're showing pictures of me and my chimp, my cheetah, around the world, not only in the United States, around the world, that he's the one that passed away and isn't, because there were many chimps that played cheetah.
Toward the end of his life, Cheetah was dealing with diabetes and arthritis. One morning, Cheetah appeared to have suffered a stroke, which affected his ability to eat and move. Dan made the difficult decision to have his friend euthanized. Cheetah the chimp died on May 3rd, 2022.
31 years, and I never left his side, basically. I was with him every day for 31 years, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I took good care of him. He learned to love me, and I loved him so much, you know, and it's a big loss. He's the ambassador for all the chimps who played in the Tarzan pictures, and his actual age and history on him will always be a Hollywood mystery. But the world is a less wonderful place without my cheetah.
Well, that's our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us for this installment of Our Desert Pass. Remember, new editions of Our Desert Pass air regularly here on NBC Palm Springs. Have a good night.